Clear my throat. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the May 19th, 2022 meeting of the Maricopa County Board of Adjustment. Rosalie, would you please do a roll call?
Chairman Loper.
Present.
Vice Chairperson.
Present.
Member Schwartz.
Present.
Member Ward.
Present.
Member Cardin. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rosalie. Move on to the announcements. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with the open meeting law of ARS 38-431. Agendas are available within 24 hours of each meeting in the Maricopa County Planning and Development Office, and also are available online at the Planning and Development website 1 week prior to the hearing at www.maricopa.gov/planning. With respect to the hearing process, cases will be considered in the order they appear on the agenda unless otherwise agreed to by the board. For each case, the applicant will be given a set amount of time to present their testimony. Any witness wishing to give testimony on a particular case shall notify the board of such interest. This shall be done by filling out a speaker's card for in-person attendance, like the one I'm holding, or registering desire to comment as noted on the published agenda. Also, at the appropriate time for each case, the chair will ask those attending in person and online who wish to speak to a case to raise their hand by literally doing that or clicking on that icon on the webinar screen. Staff will provide the chair with the names of persons who have registered and noted desire to comment, and those registered participants who have raised their hand. The chair will call on each named participant one at a time. Such testimony shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. However, the actual amount of time allowed to testify shall be at the discretion of the board chair. The chair will conduct the hybrid in-person and virtual public hearing according to the bylaws and according to the rules established by the chair regarding public comment. Votes will be done by roll call vote only, and the chair will verbally identify the specific board members responsible for all motions and seconds. Moving on to the minutes for April 14th, 2022. Are there any comments, deletions, or additions? Seeing none. Oh,
Quick question.
yes, Member Schwartz.
I can't go to this because I wasn't here, correct? Okay.
All right. There isn't a vote actually on those. There's no other comments or changes. Those are considered to be approved. Move on to staff with the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, board members, quickly, BA 2022-012 DGiviano property in District 4 has been withdrawn. No action is required. And then we have 4 items on consent. I'll proceed through. They are BA 2022-006, known as the Whitwam property in District 2. These are variances to the east front setback and north side setback for a 10,481 square foot property in the R18 zoning district at 548 North 104th Place. There's no known opposition. The findings in paragraph 17 are that it meets the statutory test with the recommended conditions A through C for approval. BA 2022-011, known as 4420 Clearwater LLC property in District 3, is a variance for hillside disturbance outside the principal building envelope for a 1.3 acre rural 43 property at 4420 East Clearwater Parkway. There's no known opposition. The findings in paragraph 16 are that it meets the statutory test for approval, subject to condition A. BA 2022-013, known as the Lawfer Hayes Dustin Lane property in District 2, is request for variances to west side yard setback, minimum lot area and minimum lot width for a 1+ acre rural 43 property at 16417 East Duane Lane in the Scottsdale area. There's no known opposition. The findings are that it meets the statutory test for approval in paragraph 16, subject to conditions A through C. And then finally, BA 2022-016, known as the Thomas and Nancy Olson Trust property in District 4. This is a variance to the lot coverage, the maximum lot coverage for a 3,750 square foot property in the R3 RUPD zoning district at 18618 North Conestoga Drive in Sun City. There's no known opposition. The findings in paragraph 16 are that it meets the statutory test for approval, subject to condition A. That concludes the consent agenda. I'm glad to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Darren. Any questions of staff on the consent agenda items? I don't have any speaker cards. Rosalie, we have anyone would register to speak, or David?
No, we do not.
Fantastic. All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda as presented by staff.
I motion for approval of the consent agenda items because they meet the statutory requirements.
We have a motion for approval by member Schwartz. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a second by member Ward. Rosalie, would you please call the roll call vote, please?
Member Schwartz,
Redundant.
Yes.
Member Ward,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson,
Yes.
Chairman Loper.
Yes.
Chairman, we have an approval of the consent agenda by a vote of 4-0.
Fantastic. Congratulations to those applicants. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 6 is the one I have next, which is BA 2021-048. Turn that over to staff for presentation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this case, known as the Olson property in District 3, is a variance to the east front setback that is determined based upon a patent easement along that lot line and hillside disturbance outside the principal building area for a 1.4 acre property in the rural 43 zoning district at 233 East Brills Road. The applicant's argument for variance is that the site is subject to extremely rugged terrain with localized elevation changes of 65 feet across the site. There is recent opposition. There's a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Downey dated May 17th, where they want to maintain current setbacks for this neighborhood, indicating that all the lots are of a very large area. And I would point out that the staff stance is that there is opportunity for redesign of what's being proposed. The single family residence is rather large and arguably too large for the site. I'd draw your attention to their exhibit on page 7 of 8 of their narrative. Therefore, in the findings on paragraph 15, staff has noted the alternatives available, which include potential for abandonment or reduction of the patent easement to increase the size of the building envelope, or to reconfigure what's proposed and shift it to the west so that it conforms and stays within the building envelope. However, should the board consider grounds for variance approval that there's a warrant for relief from the standard, in paragraph 16, draw your attention to suggested conditions A through B. I believe the applicant's present today. I'll try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Darren. Great presentation as always. Any questions of Darren or other staff?
I have a question.
Member Person?
Thank you. Darren, can you talk a little more about the patent easement? I'm used to those being kind of a blanket easement that you can't abandon. So maybe this one's different than what I'm thinking.
Mr. Chairman, board member Person, these were created by federal act many years ago. There is a process for abandoning patent easements in the cities, and for the past several years, there's a process in the county as well. It is a time-consuming process, but it is a potential for this site. A lot of those patent easements, they were just laid down around 5-acre parcels or other areas, and without regard to terrain or topography, and quite often they could be roads that aren't to be used. It sounds like this may be a road that's being used, but if it's a local street, it probably doesn't need a 33-foot half width, which is pretty standard for patent easements. And if that was reduced, that changes the street line from where the front setback is measured, and therefore that alters the principal building envelope. And staff believes the variance may not be needed if that process was completed.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
Yes.
Member Schwartz?
How long a process is that?
It's a process through through McDOT. I believe it's going to be several months if they haven't submitted application this time.
I see our legal counsel shaking his head, but my experience with patent easements is it is through McDOT in several months as well. But for an opposing opinion,
Mr. Chairman, in addition to my other duties, I also represent McDOT. McDOT makes a determination and they make that determination rather quickly. Whatever delay there is just getting on a board agenda. But once McDOT determines that they have no problem with the abandonment, it can happen pretty quickly. Sometimes it's time consuming, depending on where you are. If McDOT has to do a larger study, Darren has indicated that he believes it's part of an active road. So the odds are McDOT would not approve abandonment, but they might approve abandonment of a portion of it. But Darren, I don't believe that's been even attempted here. Just by quick way of background, it used to be, member Person, that cities could abandon, counties could not, had no authority at all. And Maricopa County actually led the charge 7-8 years ago now, Darren, to get permission from the legislature to abandon them. And McDOT does them all the time now.
Thank you, Wayne. Wayne, a quick question for you. I realize there could be, such as if it's into the street or something, but generally speaking, is it fairly positive that they get abandoned or reduced? I know you can't guarantee this particular one, but just your experience in them?
Yes, because the ones that I see are usually McDOT has signed off on them, and so it's going to proceed. I haven't gotten complaints that McDOT doesn't do it. I know we had to make a determination whether they could partially abandon or not, but it really depends. If we have a lot of patent easements that there was a reason for them when they were created in the 1930s, it just doesn't exist anymore. There's a lot of partials because of subdivisions and a lot of lot splitting. Just so you understand, in the 1930s, the federal government made these patent easements all over the West. And the logic was someday this area is going to develop and it would be impossible for governmental entities to be able to afford to purchase rights of way. They're not only rights of way, they're also utility easements. So the federal government reserved them. I believe it was around it wasn't every section. Was it every section, Darren?
Yeah.
Or every 5 acres, I think.
Most of these around here are the small act, and so small lots act, so it's 5 acres.
Around every 5 acre parcel.
Wow.
So cities got permission to abandon them because I know, for instance, 7th Avenue or Street, there was a patent easement about 50 feet off the alignment. And the city said, well, we have 7th Street. What do we need? So that's the genesis. So it really depends where you are.
Okay.
Is it necessary to connect up?
All right. Thank you very much. Member Schwartz?
Dan, do you by chance have a larger aerial we can see this site in perspective to the surrounding neighborhood or surrounding or regional area?
I think we have 1, 2 away. It doesn't look like it's of a better scale though. One more. It's not a better scale. Yeah. But on that aerial on the case map, it does look like that alignment, like the physical road doesn't go through. It looks like it accesses the property to the east, but it doesn't go through to the road to the north, I don't believe. Or if it does in a very less developed nature.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is the applicant available that wishes to speak? Or the representative?
Aston, can you hear me?
Yes, please identify yourself and then go ahead.
Yes, my name is Andrew Chi. I am the applicant and representative for case BA 2021-048. Also on the line, we have the property owner listening in and the architect. So in case he needs to chime in, he is also available. I am with Andrew Chi Planning, based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and I myself, along with the architect and the owner, worked on this, submitted this variance case that is in front of you. Next slide. To actually answer your question, if there's a better aerial, this shows more of the vicinity to the north, south, east, and west of the property. You really can't see the property lines, but they're there. To answer your question, the roadway that you can see, it's basically 3rd Street, dead ends there. It is partially in 30-foot right of way. The accessory building you see is an existing detached garage that will be demolished. What you don't see here, but you'll see in the next coming slide, is there's very steep elevation changes that there will never be a roadway connection to Bryles because of the drastic drop in. There's a cliff that you see that you can't see in this one that would prevent any roadway from being built. So I wanted to point that out for the board in case you're wondering. Next slide. The staff report stated that the variance requests, there are 2. The first request is to reduce the front yard setback on the east side from 15 feet to 40, as permitted in the zoning ordinance. The other request is a proposed hillside disturbance of just over 1,800 square feet outside the lot's buildable area, where the hillside disturbance is prohibited per the zoning ordinance. I wanted to point out that the original request in our report, and when we originally submitted, and through conversations between the owner and the county, was the request is to reduce the east front setback from 40 feet to 19 feet to accommodate the new single-family structure or single-family dwelling. The other request is to reduce the north setback, which is a side street, from the 20 feet to 3 feet. Now, these setbacks are measured from not the property line, but from the GLO easement lines, because that's considered right of way, and that is shifting all of the buildable area significantly towards the west and south, which is why we're here in front of you to request the variance. So I wanted to make sure that that is known, that the report stated 2 requests for variances, but want to let you know that we originally requested the two items below that in the original submittal. Next slide. Here you see, this is the site plan that shows the current configuration of the proposed home. What you can kind of see in areas that are just white is there's another slide that I'll get to, but you'll see the areas that will be disturbed. You'll see the areas that will be maintained. You'll notice that along the western side of the property there is a wash. The old roadway is going under, you'll see it just under 6 and 12. That's going to be demolished, removed, and revegetated. A lot of where the house is proposed is already disturbed terrain. Back in, in the 80s and 90s, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, this property was disturbed already, graded significantly, about 2/3 of the property, or about half, I'm saying, and where the house is proposed is basically where the parcel has been disturbed pre-2000. Now, obviously, I think there was a zoning direction that says that anything that was disturbed prior to 2000 is now considered natural terrain. The goal of the variance is to just slightly allow a reduction in the setbacks from the GLO line, not the property line, and to allow the house to be built in the pre-disturbed areas and not have it moved any more to the west to avoid any disturbance of actual natural terrain. Just wanted to point that out. And I'll go ahead and forward to the next slide. This graphic shows a more visual representation of what is being requested through the original variance requests from our original case submittal. You'll see that the GLO easement exists along the north side and on the east side. The setbacks are taken from there, and you'll see that we're only requesting a small variance on the north, where the little triangular piece that says variance, and a portion of the home in the 40-foot setback on the east side. So this should show you a more visual representation. Also wanted to let the board be aware that you did mention that there was opposition that was received from the neighbor to the east. There was earlier this morning or last night, a neighbor to the west submitted a letter in support of the variance. So I wanted to, that was forwarded to me by the senior planner, Rachel Applegate, this morning. So I wanted to make sure to let the board know that not only is there an opposition letter to the east, a letter of support was received from the neighbor to the west. Next slide. Just want to briefly go over everything. The reason why the first test is the subject property is facing just very unnatural, rugged, undulating, uneven, and steep terrain. There is a 65-foot difference in elevation if you go from the northeast to the southwest corner of the property. It's a significant drop. There is a wash that the owner is trying to avoid building or even disturbing on the west side of the property. And obviously there are two government land office patent easements along the northeast sides of the property, which would reduce the buildable area. Now, to kind of elaborate on what if the applicant was provided an opportunity to apply to abandon the GLO, that conversation did occur with the county between the owner and the county and the county staff late last year, and the owner was discouraged or given less than stellar topic to not go with the abandonment. So the reason why there is not a abandonment application for the GLO is because the owner was discouraged from doing so, and it was made aware that it wouldn't be approved. And the owner is on the line and can elaborate more on what transpired between him and county staff if that needs to be detailed. But I just wanted to make sure that is known why the owner didn't submit an application to request an abandonment of the two easements. Next slide. There are hardships that the owner did not create that pertains to the MCZO. The owner purchased the property in November 2020. There are natural encumbrances and elevation changes that limit the buildable area. Obviously, the federal government and the BLM dedicated the two 33-foot wide easements back in the 20th century. And the subject property was significantly graded and disturbed by previous owners dating back to 1976. So I just wanted to kind of make that known that there are not only are there physical challenges, but there are challenges that the owner is facing to try to develop this lot, and that wasn't the fault of the current owner and of previous owners instead, and the government. Next slide. And finally, would this cause a negative impact? Similar properties lack these encumbrances and enjoy rights already provided by the zoning ordinance without variances. The variance would allow the new home to allow remaining actual natural terrain and the wash from affecting neighboring properties. It would also, the variance, approving the variance will also allow the home to follow the natural terrain at 1 story, thus not impacting views of neighbors, even though views are not protected in the county. Variance will allow rooms for the construction of retaining walls, driveway, emergency vehicle access, and an underground septic system without disturbing the natural terrain. That's why the owner is requesting these minor variances to able to fit these other requirements on site without having to disturb any more hillside areas. And just so that you are aware, the 33-foot easement at the east side of the property could be potentially abandoned if that would be something that the county could have a conversation with the owner. Just so you know, right now the home is proposed at 73 feet from the east property line, or so even if you incorporate the easement, that is a significant, even if the easement was abandoned, you would still have a 73-foot setback. I mean, and clearly if the opposition has any concerns, I want to point out that, and you'll see in the next aerial that I'll have, is the next door neighbor does have a home much closer to the property line than what the owner is requesting. To top off my presentation, I want to show you a couple of slides. If you can go 2 more slides over. This graphic shows, that was done by the architect, shows the pre-disturbed areas of the lot and the natural undisturbed areas of the lot. As you can see, the home is significantly proposed in the areas that are already pre-disturbed. Pre-disturbed meaning it was already graded pre-2000. And we're trying to avoid just disturbing any additional natural area as much as possible. Next slide. To give you a sense of just how the area is, just to show the vicinity, you'll see that there are many homes, especially the one next door. You can even kind of see it where there are homes much closer to the property line than what the owner is requesting. And I wanted to give you that aerial representation of how other properties are constructed. There are multiple properties in the area that could have violations of setbacks, and what the owner is trying to do is just asking for just some relief to be able to construct his home with doing it the correct way. Next slide. This kind of gives you a better understanding of the uneven terrain. You'll notice that the next door neighbor to the right, to the east, the property lines aren't shown, but the current house is only a few feet from the front property line. There is evidence of 2 variances that the east property may have obtained back in 1981 and 2003. Therefore, if there is evidence of a variance for the east property, why can't the current owner of the subject property be allowed to have the variances to construct the home? You also notice that just to the left of the accessory garage, you'll notice that there is a significant drop where the saguaro cactus is. That's just a significant unnatural grading that occurred back in the late 20th century. And then finally, you'll notice at 3rd Street, the dirt road basically ends on a cul-de-sac type of setup, and there's that giant cliff that you just cannot connect to Briles Road. And you'll notice that the lot slopes significantly from the northeast to the southwest towards the wash, and that these very challenging terrain is hard to develop over, and that is why the owner is trying to construct the house with some minor setback requests. And I believe that concludes all of my slides. See if there's anyone after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chi.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions of the applicant? And Mr. Chi, on your cover slide, you noted the property owner. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on behalf of the variance request?
Mr. Olson, I believe he would like to say a few words. Brian, are you on the line? See if it's
Brian is on the line. I have him unmuted, but he has to unmute on his computer in order to speak.
There we go. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Not too much to say other than that we would like to build it where it makes the most sense, and we can provide the least disturbance to the existing properties, and where we're putting it. Sort of the history for the not trying to obtain the patent easement abandonment was I actually spoke with the county prior to purchasing the property back in November of 2020. And at that point, it sounds like from your discussion, the rules may have changed and the county can actually do the abandonment. At that time, I was told I would have to apply to the US government and that they would traditionally deny that until this became under a municipality. And so perhaps that information has changed, but that's why we didn't pursue the abandonment, is they said it would be refused until this was actually part of a city. And they said, just go ahead and apply for the variance at that point, and then that's the strategy that we took. And so, yeah, I would just note that it is going to be the 53 feet away from the property line, as we said, which should be plenty far. We don't expect, I think we agree with the county that we predict this would eventually be abandoned, much as the county has predicted. And all we're asking is to be able to get started doing the construction without waiting for the US government to be able to abandon it. Are there does anyone have a question for me, or?
Any questions of either the property owner or the applicant? Member Schwartz, go ahead.
Sorry, the applicant. Thank you. Mr. Shi, can you pull up the picture you showed of the variance area with the topography below it?
Let's see. Was it towards the beginning or the end?
Towards the beginning.
Okay.
Actually show the topography, the one with just the topography on it, because it's hard to see all the lines on there. Right there. Okay. So is it fair to assume that the master bedroom side is your cuts and your fills on the side are towards the side front setback where the 9 is at, close to the 9? Note in symbol.
I think the owner Brian also can elaborate a little more detail. Brian, can you elaborate on the commissioner's question, the board's question regarding the cuts and fills around the master bedroom?
The master bedroom is shown sitting on the fill that was added in the 20th century. That's the so that slope that you're looking at just to the south of the master bedroom slopes up to the east. So the base of that hill is on the left and the top of that hill is on the right. And that's a bunch of fill. The cut is on the backside up towards Bryles Avenue. That's what forms that cliff with the retaining wall shown. And that's why we believe that there will be no, that 3rd Avenue would never connect Bryles at that point.
And board members of the board, I stated in my presentation that the setback from the property line to the east is 73 feet. I was wrong. I am sorry. It is basically 53 feet. You can kind of see that measurement, 53.29, just to the right of this graphic. Thank you, Brian. That is a setback from the property line, and not the GLO easement line, even though the setback is taken from the GLO easement line. So I just want to make that
so
clear.
if the GLO easement was dropped, then we would be back more than 40 feet. We'd be 53 feet back. 73 feet that Andrew cited is the current requirement. That's the 33 feet plus the 40 feet. And we're asking to reduce it to 53 feet, which is still well over the 40 feet we predict it will eventually be when all of this finishes out.
So my next question is this a single level house?
It's
Yes.
a single level with a walkout.
Okay, so there's no steps
Walkout garage.
in the house. It's just grading the lot out flat, the building area flat, correct?
Maybe so there's a garage, so the area to the left is lower. So on the right hand side it's a single level. On the left hand side there's a walkout garage. I don't know if that counts as I don't know the terminology.
There's no steps within the house. There's no stairs inside the house. It's all one level, correct?
There are stairs pictured see where it says garage?
Mm-hmm.
Just above the garage there, you can see there's stairs pictured. Those are internal to the house. Those go down from the house to the level below. So the top of the house is the house as it sits on that bank. Basically, it's taking advantage of the fill that's in there to allow for a walkout garage at the level at the bottom of where the fill was, while the house sits on top of the graded and filled area that was already set up.
So what the owner is stating, board members, is it is one level. The majority of the dwelling sits on one elevation of the terrain, the fill, And then those steps that you see walk down to a lower level of the terrain to get to the driveway area where you see that number 1. Thus taking advantage of the terrain, but keeping the house still one level. It's not a 2-story house, just to clarify that.
So my next question is what made you decide to want to push the house to the right and not take advantage of all the additional real estate you had to the left? And I don't know, I don't know what east, north, south, east, and west is. There's no insignia. Oh, no, I'm sorry. So I see where north is, but I'm assuming the left is the east or west? West.
Left is west, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so why didn't you push the house to the west to provide? For
Actually, sorry, it's to the one of the key reasons is that hillside also. Well, so hillside regulations are a little confusing to me, having only recently learned about them. But they have height restrictions, and they require the home to follow the terrain. And so the further west we go, we have to essentially collapse down that hillside. So, for us, we can't really push west without potentially having to ask for a variance for height to have the house to the west due to the restriction on the height of a home above the natural grade. And then it's not even clear when combined with the year 2000 grandfathering clause, whether the original grade refers to an imagined grade that we no longer know what it is, that existed prior to the grandfather grading, or whether the original grade might refer to the area that has been grandfathered. So,
Okay, so my next question is did you ever consider pushing the house to the west and putting steps internally so you drop the house down so you can meet the height requirement within the ordinance?
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest, I might have that might be a better question for the architect, because the way that I actually approached this was I talked to the architect and said, hey, I don't know all of these regulations that well, and you're from the area. Let's go ahead and within whatever parameters design this to the best extent possible to fit this situation and the regulations. So I did not have him construct multiple plans and then decide between them, if perhaps that's what you were suggesting.
Well, what I'm suggesting maybe is from experience in developing a lot of houses in hillside, that you don't put a flat house on a hillside lot. You have a stair-step house down, so you have more cut and fills, but you have to deal with the creativity of following the contours of the land, which may have eliminated having the need to get a variance and just being more creative in taking with your architect with creating a plan that fits on the lot.
Yeah, and I guess so the where it is, it's got this big graded spot. So, perhaps that would, and I hadn't thought of this, we could, I suppose, bring in fill dirt and fill all the way back to the original grade. If I don't know how the grandfathering works, am I also allowed to restore it at will potentially? So I'd add a whole bunch of dirt at the back and then put the house up on that dirt after sliding 19 feet west? Because the hillside's gone as part of the problem. Like in a normal hillside lot, there's actually hillside, but this one's really confusing because they flattened the hillside. So all I have is a flat spot, but it's still hillside.
To the two speakers, if you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt you. And we're looking at staff to kind of address the question regarding pre-existing disturbance, grandfathering, those things.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I do believe the staff report doesn't delve deep into this, and it seems to have been the issue raised with the applicant's presentation that there is significant disturbance that exists in the eastern half of this property with natural vegetation and slopes in the western half. You'll note, I believe you can see it in what's on the exhibit right now, but there is an existing detached garage sitting by itself out there that actually encroaches into the patent easement. That's being removed. So all the eastern portions of this property are disturbed, and it sounds as if in avoiding the natural slopes and natural vegetation, including the wash a large wash on the western perimeter, and what looks to be a smaller wash towards the middle of the site that isn't really clear from the aerials, but it's on his plans. And I assume the reason it's not clear is it's kind of rocky instead of sandy because of the terrain. But that pushes everything into the eastern half of the property. And that seems to be what they're proposing, to build this house on the eastern half to avoid the slopes in the natural areas. And that area is already disturbed, and you can see that in the aerial actually. They are going to be removing and encroaching the garage from the patent easement. So that is what I've heard in his presentation today.
All right, thank you, Darren. There's a comment by a board member. We haven't forgotten the applicant. Go ahead, Member Person.
I was also going to say, I think if you look at the exhibit that had the orange and yellow, if they were to push their building to the west, as you suggested, Member Schwartz, they may eliminate the variance, but then they would have a bigger issue with encroaching into the undisturbed area.
And creating additional disturbance. But I did like the suggestion because it was very creative.
Well, but they're allowed to have some, I mean, I understand that you want to try to eliminate the amount of disturbed area. There's already disturbed area, but they are allowed to disturb a certain amount of area. I guess the question is what is the preview of the board and what are our, requirements? And so I'm suggesting there might be a creative architectural solution,
Certainly.
understanding what some of their restrictions are that we can avoid going through a variance process.
Right. I'm going to turn it back over to the applicant. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add or state?
Chairman, members of the board, Andrew Chi, the applicant. No, if there are any additional questions regarding whether the home could be shifted to the left, the architect is also available to answer any questions. But to answer the board's question, if you I just want to go back to the slide, if you can move the slide maybe 4 over to the orange and yellow. There you go. So yeah, you can see I don't have the county zoning ordinance in front of me regarding the hillside requirements, but yeah, there's a certain, I believe it's maybe 15% or up to 75,000 that you can disturb, and the owner is trying to do very minimal disturbance as possible. Yes, if the house is shifted south and west to avoid the variance, we come up with issues of disturbing what is basically natural terrain and running up against the hillside regulations, which would result in another variance request. So it's either one or the other, and there's already no guarantee. One other thing that I wanted to make sure that is the septic system also needs, where it's proposed in the other exhibit, is Brian, I don't know if you can fill in, it's relatively flat, and there is really no other location that the septic can be placed, and so that has to be taken into consideration as well. But just wanted to point that out to the board before I end my presentation.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? All right. Going to proceed with any members of the public who wish to speak. Start with those that may be in attendance. Is there anyone here in attendance who wishes to speak? I do not have a completed speaker card. I'm not seeing any raised hands. Is there any members online who wish to speak?
Chairman Loper, I wanted to make sure the board saw the note from Allison Fisher. She's online, but just wanted to make a comment. So I wanted to make sure you noted that in the chat. And I have Keely Call, who is online. They need to unmute their side and then they're able to speak.
Hello, this is Keely Call. Thank you so much for your time and for giving me the ability to speak. My husband and I recently moved to Briles Road. We're at 404 East Briles, which is to the east of this property. And by the way, to the homeowners, it's a beautiful property that you're wanting to build. So I can see why you're so that you're wanting to make it your home, and I get that. The issue is that on Briles Road, when I was reading through the documentation last night, I noticed that with that setback, it could mess up or just, it's going to prohibit the Briles Drive, which does not have an exit. We do not have an exit out of Briles Road. That's a private driveway. And I know it kept being said, oh, well, there's not going to be a way for Briles Road to connect to 3rd Street, I think was the question. Actually, if we were to push that forward later, it could potentially happen. And that's something that we need to think about. Since moving to this home about a year ago, the fire department and EMS has had to be called out to my home because of Briles Road and how narrow it is, which is actually a private drive. And if you want to back out the screen some more, like that big one that I was looking at, I'm sorry, I've been messaging y'all all in the chat. Sorry, anyway, what I'm saying is that when EMS was trying to get to our house, they couldn't, and they wouldn't be able to back out. And I recognize on page 8 of 9 of the submission also that there would be this nice paved pad and all these good things to help with the neighborhood. Well, that really doesn't help with my neighborhood because y'all are all the way at the bottom of the mountain and there's already somewhere to turn around if you see those 3 things. In addition, most of the photos that I saw that were submitted, I really feel like there needs to be further investigation on that. The wash is small. I don't know about all of the rules or regulations, but on behalf of me, my children, and the other family members that live on Briles Road, disturbing or getting that setback to that drive and potentially eroding that road or making it any more narrow. Or if there is, I know there was some type of retention wall that was going to max out at 5 to 6 feet high. I don't see how there's a 65-foot drop off if the retaining wall is only going to be 5 to 6 foot high to retain the Briles Road. So I'm trying, this is my first time ever going into one of these committee meetings. And again, beautiful home, just trying to figure out how to protect my family and make sure that if there was something that were to happen, that there's a way to exit or get to and from during your construction and even after construction. Because as you can see, if you follow Briles, there's a dead end. It does not go through. There is no way to go in and out. It's a one-way in, one-way out. And it's already narrow as it is. That's my only concern. And I don't know if there's a way, maybe I'm misunderstanding something. And if so, please, by all means, help me understand. But there's going to be 3 families that will be affected and in a negative way if it is disturbed and that easement is granted in the event that we can eventually maybe connect to 3rd Avenue if we're unable to connect on the other side.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the speaker? All right, seeing none, I know Mr. Peck had something to say.
Just a procedural point, Mr. Chairman. David pointed out to you that someone had made a comment. So the record would reflect that the board members read that comment. I am advised that the comments will not record on the DVD. So I'm going to request that the chairman read the comment so it's part of the record.
I can do that if I had them in front of me.
Someone read it for the record.
Yeah,
Rachel has.
and I can do that for you. At 10:24, received a comment from Allison Fisher stating, "Hello, I'd like to voice my opposition. I'm the north neighbor just above the proposed property. I voiced my opposition of the setback and proposed retaining wall against Briles Road. I do not wish to speak. Thank you."
Thank you very much, Rachel. We do have a person in the audience who's raised their hand who wishes to speak. Did you fill out a speaker request card?
No.
All right, we'll get you one of those. If you could come up to the microphone and provide your name, please, and then fill out a speaker card and give it to Rosalie after.
Thank you.
And go ahead and give us your name and
Thank you. My
comment.
name is Nick Solomon. I am the owner of Next Door 246 East Briles Road.
When you say next door, to the east, west, north, or south?
To, I think, south, just on the other side of the Briles. Just cross street from the land.
Okay, so to the north.
North, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm not here to oppose. I wish everybody the best and everybody deserves something, but I've been listening all to this neighborhood. So I think I don't want to take nobody's time. I think most of whatever they like or they prefer, I agree with them. I'm just next door. And again, I'm not here. I wish the best for everybody. But, you know, this is very nice neighborhood and we try to keep it nice and it's like antique. You don't see these neighborhoods like nice and open. So I appreciate, like, I wish the best for everybody, but I appreciate, like, you know, to be respect the ideas and the opinion. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come down. It does look, indeed look like a beautiful area, beautiful homes.
Thank you. And I apologize. I didn't see nobody.
No worries at all. We have another person in the audience who wishes to speak. Yes, if you could fill out a comment card and then provide your name for the record and your comments.
Chairman Loper, I have another online speaker as well.
I hadn't forgotten you, David. Just a couple people kind of bum rushing the podium, if you will.
Rushing. Okay, my name's Mary Sandy and I live at 223 East Briles, directly west. And I've been in the neighborhood for 23 years at this house. And from our driveway, we can see the lot you're all talking about and where that freestanding garage is. And being there and walking that property, I doubt they're ever going to take third through because it's a pretty high cliff where they're talking about, and Briles dead ends, but then there is a road that you can take over where that cliff sits. It's a very complicated lot because it has, Briles goes in and it goes up, and then their little driveway goes this way, and then the drops, and then the wash. So we're excited if someone can tear down that garage and put a beautiful home there. And what they're requesting, it's just the house they want to build is going to be further away from the house to the east of them than that garage is right now. And it's going to take the garage down and make it a little more pleasing to the neighborhood.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the speaker? Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? If not, David, who's the next person online who wishes to speak?
I have Scott Call.
Go ahead, Mr. Call, provide your name and your comments.
Yes, so my name is Scott Call. I'm on 404 East Briles. So my concern is that if they were to narrow that the drive going up the easement that's currently in place, what'll end up happening is if we have any trucks, the trash truck comes up that hill. If we have something delivered, it makes it that much more narrow. And then someone else had mentioned that like fire or something, it would make it that much easier for someone to roll off. And when I looked at those pictures, it looks like the house is very close to that wall. I would be very concerned that something would fall onto that house if something were to happen or a retaining wall were to fail, which can happen. And so I have pretty big concerns around narrowing the road and the pathway up to the other houses and other neighbors for both sides, obviously for me and my house, but also for the house that they're talking about building being so close to the retaining wall. And again, something falling or happening that would be catastrophic, being so close to that wall.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Member Person.
Yes, I have actually a question for the applicant. Clarification, really. We're hearing a couple people talk about narrowing the road, and the way I'm understanding this, the new house to be built is actually further away from the road than the existing. structure. And if that easement ever were to be reduced, it's not necessarily reducing the width of the road, but rather the right of way. So I just wanted to clarify that because I'm not seeing anything that's suggesting that road itself, the physical pavement and maneuverability would be compromised.
Agreed. I've had that question as well. Or comment. Applicant, did you have any response?
Yes, this is Andrew Chi, applicant. I just wanted to respond to some of the to answer some of the questions regarding some of the neighbors' concerns, and it is everyone's concern is warranted. Just wanted to clarify, although I want to, if you can move the slide over to third from last, there should be an axiometric view of the lot. Right there. Oh, go back. I think it was one more. Right there, perfect. Okay. I don't have a photo of the cliff, but in the staff report on page 14 of 24, or in my application, page 2 of 8, there are 3 photo exhibits that showcases the cliff that is where Briles Road is, and the dirt road that is along the 3rd Street alignment. Photo exhibit number 1 and photo exhibit number 2 both show that there is a significant drop off where Briles Road is, and there is a car shown in the photo exhibit that is Briles Road, and then there's a cliff, and then photo exhibit 2 shows standing on Briles Road looking south towards the 3rd Street alignment, although it doesn't seem like it is, but that is a drop off. So just wanted to clarify that Briles Road has stand the test of time with no retaining walls. The owner is not going to disturb Briles Road. The owner is leaving it in place and only improving the driveway that comes off of Briles Road, accessing the site, as shown in the G&D site plan. The owner, and in regards to whether or not this lot has a 65-foot drop, no, the cliff isn't 65 feet, but the entire lot going from northeast all the way down to the southwest part of the lot is in total a 65-foot elevation difference. Just wanted to clarify that. But the owner is not going to mess with Briles Road. The owner is also going to construct a retaining wall, basically in that photo north of the current accessory garage, to shore up that land to ensure that there are no erosion issues in regards to whether or not Briles Road can be supported or not. So just wanted to clarify some of the concerns of the neighbors, but I also wanted to clarify some of what people are assuming that Briles Road is going to be touched. It is not. There is a private driveway being built on actual private property, not even in the GLO easements, but actual private property where the majority of the improvements are going to be located. Because the 33-foot GLO easements will still be preserved. Nothing is going to be built in either both easements. Therefore, if the county down the road ever wanted to improve Briles Road, or even 3rd Street for some matter, that is still an option to assist the owner, the neighborhood, with any emergency vehicle issues. But I wanted just to make that point known before the board proceeds with the case. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else, David, online who wishes to speak on this case?
I'm not aware of anyone else.
All right, any other questions by any board member of the applicant, any of the speakers or staff? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it over to board members for comment and discussion and or motion. Member Schwartz.
Well, I think my comments are pretty much in line with what my questions were. I think that there's, we have a preview to review this case based upon the merits of our requirements as a board. And frankly, I believe there's an architectural an engineering solution that could be done here on this site to make it comply. There's I'm sure a small, as you can see, a small drainage way that goes through the site. But in my experience on site, that can be moved to, as long as it comes in at the same point and exits at the same point. The house could be shifted back, and creativity in the architecture of the, of the footprint of the house to accommodate the site as they, purchase it. So I'm not going to be in favor of supporting a variance here because I don't believe it meets the criteria. So those are my comments.
Fair enough. Member Person, or do you have any comments?
Yeah, and I'm curious what Member Ward has to say, but I do believe that there are a number of peculiar conditions here, and I understand Member Schwartz's point. And yes, there could be another way, but I'm comfortable with supporting this based on the way it's currently proposed.
Thank
And
you,
I'm
Member.
happy to make a motion if I want to hear what Member Ward has to say.
Okay.
First.
Member Ward, do you have any comments?
I do, excuse me, I do not. I would support a motion.
Thank you, Member Ward. A couple of comments that I have is I agree, and I absolutely appreciate everything Member Schwartz said, because there are some solutions to this. They'd be a redesign. However, the existing terrain is a hardship. It does have a drop. And more importantly, in my mind, the bulk of the building is going in areas that are already disturbed. I look at the easement, even though it's a pre-existing condition, it's additive or cumulative to the setback. It has the effect of requiring a 73-foot front setback and a 53-foot side yard, if I'm reading those correctly. I would hope the applicant would look to abandon or reduce those, because I don't know if they're needed in their entirety or not. That's out the purview of what we do. But for those two reasons, mainly being the pre-existing disturbance, that you don't have to add to that, and that the terrain difference is a significant grade change, I also support this particular variance. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Sure. I move we approve case BA 2021-048, subject to the conditions outlined by staff.
We have a motion for approval by Member Person.
Second.
We have a second by Member Ward. Before taking a vote, I have a question of our county attorney, Mr. Peck. I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask anyway. Under kind of our new guidelines for stipulations, we can't mandate or dictate that somebody apply for, in this instance, a GLO easement, or that they restore disturbed areas that are not part of the building envelope or things like that, can we?
That is correct. You cannot.
Cannot. I was trying to bring some stuff into it, but thank you very much. Yes, go right ahead, Member Schwartz has a question.
Can you tell me, or tell the board, is the fact that the property is in hillside or has hillside topography to it considered a peculiar condition?
It can be if it's peculiar. In other words, if it's, can you picture Devil's Tower in Wyoming?
Sure.
Devil's Tower, although it's at elevation, everything is flat, and then Devil's Tower sticks up.
Right, but
that would be a peculiar condition. If everything around you is the same types of topography, then you have to decide, is it peculiar or is it just the area?
Right. So, but in this case, or in the case of the cases that we see, we have a hillside ordinance that deals with conditions of property within the hillside, that has topography. So therefore, that particular ordinance gives you guidelines of how to build within the hillside. And so therefore, the hillside isn't a peculiar condition. because there's an ordinance that allows you to be creative to design within that.
Well, I wouldn't agree that it gives you direction on how to design, but what it does is it tells you what limits would be applied to your ability to design, which, as I understood, the applicant hadn't looked at. But understand that the peculiar condition is a condition of the property that is peculiar, not what everybody else has. Then you, if there is a peculiar condition, then you decide if, because we've applied the standards of the zoning ordinance, given that peculiar condition, a hardship is created. The peculiar condition is not the hardship. It's application of the ordinance to that condition that has to create the hardship.
Okay, then I have one more question to staff then, if you don't mind.
No, go right ahead.
I'm sorry.
This is the lecture I gave in Preston 2 weeks ago.
No, this is good. This is good because we talk about the importance of following what we are obligated to review these cases upon. So staff, if the topography of the land then becomes a peculiar condition, then why did we see a recommendation for denial? Because there conceivably could be theoretically a peculiar condition. So I'm just curious on just what your opinion is of that.
It's the amount of disturbance. It's not the grade in a hillside. Go ahead, Darren.
Mr. Chairman, Member Schwartz, other members of the board, yes. I do believe that there is a good argument to be made for the fact that there is slopes that can be a topographic constraint, pushing property in a certain direction, and in the direction it's being pushed, there's previous disturbance. And it's appropriate to develop on it arguably is appropriate to develop in the areas previously disturbed and avoid development on the slopes. To answer your specific question, in a more layman's terms, yes, I believe that slope can be a topographic constraint. The presence of slopes is not warrant for relief from those hillside regulations, but the slope itself can be a topographic constraint that is a peculiar condition when applied with the development standard.
So in this case, what was your reasoning behind denial of the case?
Mr. Chairman, Member Schwartz, I think there could be a good argument made for support or denial. The planner, who is no longer around that wrote the staff report, he has since relocated. But I think he focused on the fact that there was administrative exhaustion that hadn't occurred, the potential to abandon the patent easement and therefore just negate the need for variance at all, which is always preferred. But I don't think there was any credence given to the fact that there's significant existing disturbance, including encroachment into the patent easement at present. So obviously this is an improvement on an existing non-conforming situation. That itself isn't warrant for the variance.
Just to clarify, based on your question, from what Darren just explained, he thought was the process of the planner. He was focusing not on the question of whether there was a peculiar condition, but whether as a result of any peculiar condition, there was a resulting hardship. If you can eliminate the complexity, if you will, of the regulations by doing something else, then the question is, did the ordinance cause the hardship, or is the hardship caused by something other than the ordinance? To get a variance under the strict language of the statutory requirement, it has to be the application of the ordinance that causes the hardship. You're obviously free to disagree with what the planner thought, but I don't believe it was based on the peculiarity. I believe it was based on the second point, which is the hardship. And those are two separate and distinct concerns that you have to address as a board member. I hope that made it more clear and not more muddy.
No, it actually did, because it really cleared my head about how I'm looking at the case. And I think that, nobody should be stuck in mud to realize that, or concrete to realize that there might be another solution, another way to look at it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, any other questions of staff? Seeing none, call for the question. We have a motion for approval by member Person and a second by member Ward. Rosalie, would you please take roll call vote?
Member Schwartz,
Yes, in favor.
Member Ward,
Yes, and I would just also like to add, which I should have added prior, that my concerns were with the ingress and egress on Brile. And having the applicant, sounds like the people who were opposed to it, that was also their concern. And so thank you to the applicant for clarifying that. And so my vote is a yes.
Vice Chair Person,
Yes.
Chairman Loper.
Yes.
Chairman, we have an approval by a vote of 4-0.
Congratulations to the applicant. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7, which is going to be introduced by Rachel.
Yes. Chairman Loper and members of the board, BA 2022-014 is for the Brown property, which includes a request to obtain a variance for an as-built covered 4-stall Mare Motel, including 2 open areas and a breezeway all under roof. The request is to exceed the rear yard lot coverage of 41.4%, where 30% is the maximum permitted per the Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance. Alicia, can you advance this slide? Oh, perfect, thank you. Can you go to the next slide? The subject site is located in the Estates North subdivision, zoned rural 43. The subdivision was recorded with 24 single-family residential lots. The site terrain is relatively flat with existing single-family residential, scattered landscaping, and an existing Mare Motel, which is subject to this variance request. Next image. There is no approved RUPD residential unit plan and development with the platted subdivision or an approved variance to increase the rear yard lot coverage. The Mare Motel meets the base zoning district with existing setbacks of 7 feet 6 inches from the north property line and 28 feet from the east and west property line. Next image, please. The Mare Motel is 26 by 100 feet for a total of 2,600 square feet and located entirely within the rear yard. The rear yard consists of approximately 156 feet by 40 feet for a total area of 6,271 square feet. The 30% lot coverage allowance accounts for a maximum of 1,881.36 square feet. The Mare Motel exceeds the lot coverage by 719 square feet, or approximately 41.4%, which is an increase of 11.46% in coverage. Next image. The violation case was initialized November 2022 for construction without building permits. An as-built permit was filed January 2021. Drainage inspection occurred on February of 2021 with notation by the drainage inspector that stated, quote, "No further construction is needed as it is as-built." Resubmittals were made in July and August of 2021. Permit issuance occurred September of 2021. 6 days after permit issuance, code compliance notified the zoning division of the error with the permit issuance exceeding the rear yard lot coverage. Zoning then sent notice to the owner to resubmit plans to address the lot coverage with instructions to reduce the size of the structure to not exceed 30%, relocate the structure, or apply for a variance. The owner refiled January 2022, which is the 4th set of comments. The zoning supervisor sent an email indicating the lot coverage was missed during the zoning review and included instructions to file for legal nonconforming government action. The owner filed for legal nonconforming, which was denied by the planning division based upon the structure being erected without benefit of obtaining building permit. Interpretation of the zoning review of the permit and allowance to proceed with legal nonconforming did not account for variation in the base zoning district standard, which is only established with a residential unit plan and development or variance subject to input and public comment. Due to the denial of the legal nonconformity, the applicant is requesting a variation to increase the lot coverage. Next slide, please. There are several options available to the owner, which include reducing the size of the structure, relocating the structure to reduce the amount of coverage within the rear yard. The slide on display, option 1, indicates that they could remove 1,000 square feet of the roofed breezeway awning. Removal of the breezeway would leave about 1,600 square feet for the 4 horse stalls and 2 open storage regions, all under roof. This would comply with the lot coverage standard, resulting in coverage of about 25.5%. Next image. Option 2 includes removing the roof over the 2 open regions, which are dimensioned at 16 by 10, and reducing the size of the awning breezeway to 10 by 60 feet. This would result at coverage at exactly 30% to meet base zoning district standard. Next image. Either of these options would allow the owner to amend the building permit to comply with base zoning district standard and obtain permit issuance and close out the code violation. Staff notes there has been public comment on the variance request, 1 neutral, 1 in opposition, citing concerns with as-built construction without obtaining a permit, which has been included with the staff report. Yesterday, we received 7 letters in support from area residents provided by the applicant, and those letters were uploaded to the Agenda Center website as well. The staff determined that the owner failed to demonstrate there's a peculiar condition facing the property and that strict application of the county ordinance has not caused physical hardship. There are alternatives available, such as amending the building permit by modifying the structure to meet the 30% allowance, reducing the size, or relocating the structure. The request does not meet the statutory test for granting of the variance. If the board finds the applicant has demonstrated due to peculiar conditions facing the land and interpretation of the county ordinance would work in unnecessary hardship to the property, the board must state on the record the basis for determination. Staff offers the board's conditions of approval as listed in paragraph 44. At this time, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. I know you had to jump in and pinch hit. Good job. Like a few questions for you, and then probably some of the board members do as well. So to summarize, permit was issued, then it was discovered there was an error, but they were told it could remain as is, and they needed to apply for a GALNC, which I assume is government action, something non-conforming. Do you know why that was denied? Is that typically, oh, go ahead.
Yes, are you referring to the government action legal non-conforming?
Yes.
Yes, so the applicant was advised through the zoning review with the building permit to file for the legal non-conforming government action because staff had missed the 30% lot coverage with the building permit review. Upon review of the application, planning staff made the determination that it was an as-built structure and that determination made by the zoning representative staff was inappropriate. They could not amend that development standard without going forward with a residential unit plan and development or a variance application.
All right, and then my second question.
Mr. Chairman, can I add on?
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
One important fact is that the permit sign off and approval and issuance, the applicant didn't depend on that to construct this structure. They had constructed it before they'd ever come in for the permit. That is the reason that the government action legal non-conforming couldn't be approved.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. And then my second question, so I'm asked this a lot or things like it. So the attached awning becomes part of the structure. If it were a portable awning, you know, like those 10 by 10 things you get when you're tailgating or you're out at a picnic or something, if it was a series of those don't require permits. They're not considered structures. But if you daisy chained or did a series of those to achieve the same effect, there'd be no violation.
Correct.
So it's by virtue of it being part of the structure versus just a canvas awning or something that they have to get the variance.
Yes, that's okay. Correct. We would still calculate that for lot coverage, so that would still be evaluated by zoning.
Even
if
the
they were separate
ones?
Structures. If they're portable, it's not considered an existing structure.
So it wouldn't
Not
apply to
permanent.
lot coverage.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Member Person.
Rachel, I have a question. If you could go back to slide 34, where you have your table of the required variances. I'm just confused about, not that I'm going to make more work, but there were a couple things where there were setbacks less than what was shown as the standard, and I was curious why those weren't also part of the variance application.
Oh, excellent question. The structure actually meets the setback standards. The Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance allows you to build accessory structures 3 feet off the rear and the side. And so this structure was actually built exceeding those standards. It's 28 feet from the west and the east, and then 7 feet 6 inches from the north property line. So they actually meet the Rule 43 standards.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. It just showed the 30 feet and something as the requirement. But thank you. That answers my question.
Perfect, thanks.
Any other questions of Rachel, Member Schwartz, or Member Ward? All right, seeing none, the applicant filled out a speaker request card. Emily Brown, do you wish to speak? And she's in attendance, and then I'll get you David after this.
Good morning, board members. Chairman, my name is Emily Brown. I'm the property owner at 118 East Jordan Lane. This is my dad. He's also the owner of the property. Do we have my PowerPoint? Oh, okay. I just wanted to give a little history of the structure and why I did do this without a permit, which standing here today, I realized was a mistake. I became a single mom unexpectedly with 4 horses that I had to board immediately, and that is why I went about this the way I did, which I do realize was not the correct way to do that. Subsequently, I did receive a violation, as we all know, and subsequent to that, I followed the county's instructions to obtain a permit, including paying the fines, getting architecturally stamped drawings, going through the county's review process, which did result in receiving the permit on September 14th of 2021. Next slide, please. Which there is just a image of the actual permit received. After the permit was received, we finished construction of this property. It was not finished before we received the permits. Almost 1 month after the project was completed, I was advised that the county, quote unquote, missed the 30% variance of my structure, and it was in violation of being 11% over the allotted 30%. My options were then to relocate it, reduce the size, or apply for the variance, which obviously that's the choice I've made so far. I submitted an application of interpretation on January 20th, 2022 for the rear yard definition. Obviously, I'm a layman when it comes to all this stuff, and the rear yard definition to me was extremely confusing, so I did need clarification on that. January 31st of 2020, I did receive the email from the plans examiner supervisor saying that 30% of the lot coverage was missed during the review, and due to that error, the permit was honored and the structure can quote unquote stand as is. And then I was advised to file the government action legal nonconforming, which I did, which I was then denied on February 23rd of 2020, once again, the county retracting its course. Next slide, please. This is an email which I have highlighted where it says the structure can stand as is. Next slide. And so per the ordinance of the peculiar circumstances and hardships that are occurring because of this, I feel the peculiar condition here is that the county approved the structure, and in reliance on this, we completed the structure. Importantly, neither the county zoning ordinance nor state law state specifically that the peculiar condition must be inherent with the land. The peculiar condition here is that by its own explanation, the county missed the alleged fact that the Mare Motel did not comply with the zoning ordinance by 11%. Clearly, it is peculiar for the county to miss this. In addition to peculiar circumstances, staff claims in their report that the aerial shots of the completed barn were taken October 16th of 2020, as seen on page 10 of staff report. Yet this home was purchased by me on September 20, 2020. That's only 3 weeks to construct this barn, according to staff. The steel to begin the build was purchased on October 21st of 2020, 5 days after the alleged photos were taken, the aerial photos were taken. Concrete footings were purchased November 9th of 2020. So clearly the materials were not even purchased at the time staff is claiming these aerial photos were taken. This is to me another peculiarity of this case. I also have checks dated and for those materials as well, if you'd like to see those. The unnecessary hardship that is created is that we have to alter the structure by 11%. If the county had indicated the Mayor Motel design would take lot coverage of over 30%, the plans could have been changed at that time to lower the cost and hardship to meet. As such, the hardship was not self-created, instead was a result of the county error. Next slide, please. Denial of the variance, I feel, will have a negative effect to not only my neighbors as well as me and my horses that I house in there. The most likely alternative is that if the variance is not granted, the 718 square feet of my front awning will have to be removed. This creates a less aesthetically pleasing barn to my surrounding neighbors who are in favor of this variance request and have the view of the front of the structure. I have 7 letters that I have submitted in writing of the surrounding neighbors that are for this variance. It will also create an animal hardship to my horses, which are no longer adequately shaded in the hot summers and as well protected from the wind and rain. The unnecessary hardship is the cost is that I have to remove this awning, which should, I feel, have been recognized in the review process. The denial of this variance, I feel, is a no-win to the surrounding neighbors and aesthetics of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. I know I do have the opposition to this, and it is the neighbor that's to the neighbor to the north of me is opposing this, and the barn backs up to their property. I don't have an aerial. And I know they're concerned with the view that it's potentially blocking for them. This structure is the view that they're missing is the private backyard of my backyard. It's not a mountain view or, you know, any scenery of any sort. This neighbor also has a standalone garage, which blocks half of my structure from the view of their backyard. If the awning does need to be altered, this opposing neighbor's view will not be changed in any way. I did reach out to this neighbor personally by letter via mail to discuss possibly planting trees for them in their backyard to help the view, which they denied to speak with me. I would still be open to discussing that if they would like. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, so this is a view of their backyard. That's their garage. That's facing my backyard. The structure on the right is the barn, so you can see kind of what their view is from their backyard. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the denial of the variance results in greater hardship to the surrounding neighbors, property owner, me, and animals, and is a no-win for the opposing neighbor. Entrusting in the county's review process has created undue hardship to me and surrounding neighbors, and is why I'm requesting approval of this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to questions from you, Mr. Peck would like to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask for an unusual procedure, and I'd like to ask Ms. Brown a question for the record, if I may.
Certainly.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, just so I understand, are you stating that you received the permit before the structure was completed?
Yes.
So you got the permit and then you continued based on that?
Yes.
Okay. Can I request that we go into executive session, please?
Certainly. I would entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Why don't we just go in the hall?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second for going to executive session. All in favor, say aye.
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 If you'll just hold tight.
My name is Wayne Peck. I'm the county attorney who's assigned to planning and development. Okay, there seems to be a factual discrepancy. You have stated that you had not completed, you got the permit and you completed. The planning and development believes it was completed. What I'd like to do is recommend that we continue this to straighten that out. If it turns out you are correct, then we will have you withdraw the variance and we will give you a letter that states that we will not pursue any violation and that you have to go on. You okay with that?
So you need proof that there's still work done?
Yeah. Oh, if you have like invoices or something, anything you can give us, that's fine. But Darren, Joel, I don't know if you've spoken with Darren, the big fellow at the end, just doesn't have any of his stuff in front of him. This is the first we knew that you're saying. It's not that we don't believe you, we just, but if you have anything that can prove that, you can get it to planning and development, then it's easy.
Okay, I can get invoices from the welder.
That was after the issues.
Mhm.
Okay,
Does
that'd
that
be
work
great.
for you?
Yeah, it does. I lost staff.
An invoice from
I'll entertain a motion to move out of executive session.
Motion to move out of executive session.
There's a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving back to the regular agenda, I'm going to turn this back over to Mr. Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you are aware, I have a concern. Ms. Brown has stated to the board that she had not completed the project, that she received the permit, and in reliance on that, she completed the permit. Staff does not have the records with them at this time to either confirm or refute that. I have spoken with Ms. Brown. She is amenable to a continuance to next month so that we can hopefully get this straightened out. If it turns out that she did rely upon it, there's one course we will take. If staff turns out correct that she did not, then we would come back here and she can pursue her case. The case has been presented, she indicated, so we can just proceed from where we were. But with her consent, my recommendation is that you continue this for a month.
Thank you very much. And I see a nod for the record. Do you agree to continuance?
Yes, I do.
And we believe that to the next meeting would be sufficient. All right, with nods from everyone else, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion for continuance
To the next,
to the next month's hearing,
okay,
June 23.
June 23rd. And that's a motion by member Schwartz, a second by member Person. Rosalie, would you please take roll call vote?
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Ward,
Yes.
Vice Chair Person,
Yes.
Chairman Loper.
Yes.
Chairman, that's a continuance by a vote of 4-0.
With all due respect, we hope we don't see you.
Yes, great timeline. Good job.
And I believe that's the end of our agenda. We are adjourned. I never. Yeah.